Well, hey everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Monday, the 26th day of September, 2022. Well, Jupiter is, according to my calendar, it's saying it's crazy bright, which means it's at opposition with the sun. Apparently, it's the closest. It's hugely bright. It has been for days. And tonight I'm going to take the binoculars out when we sit out and take a look at how close I can see it through the binoculars. I guess through binoculars you don't have to have a telescope. I mean, you're not going to see, a whole lot, but supposedly you'll be able to see the moons, the four biggest moons around it. Anyway, we'll talk about the effect of that astrologically here in a second when we do the esoteric influences. But if you can get out, and if you haven't noticed, it's very cool. I mean, it's so bright that, it looks like, I don't even know what it looks like. It's incredible. So it's just hugely bright. And so we're going to be looking at that tonight. And that's because we go out every night and I have apps that track satellites and stuff. And it's kind of fun to see what ones are up there and anything else that doesn't seem to come up on my apps. So anyway, it's just something we like to do, my husband and I. So let's see. Let's take a look at today's esoteric influences. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you come back, thank you. So I hope you'll click subscribe if you haven't and come back on Mondays and Thursdays to talk about tarot and runes and how they can, we do a little reading and see how it can influence our day or the next few days or what have you. Just different things to think about than maybe you might have thought of before. So that's really why I like it. I'm not really so much into predictions. I'm just kind of trying to figure out what are the basic influences we can get from this kind of divination tool that we use here. So anyway, the other thing I start each reading off with the esoteric influences for that particular day. So we'll do Mondays today. That's in a post over on the blog. My blog is called Stepping Aside, and the web address is imsteppingaside.com. And if you forget, you can click on Show More and scroll past the description of what I'm doing here, and you'll see some links and to social media and stuff like that. But the website is also there. So anyway, if you want to check that out, it's basically a blog. It's got all kinds of stuff in there. You'll see. Anyway, let's take a look at today's esoteric influences. We're with the 26th day. We're looking at an 8 numerology. The runes I drew for today were Fehu, which is the first rune of the Elder Futhark, and that's about transaction. It means cattle and wealth. Wealth that's movable, transactions, so that indicates being able to transact with others. It's also life force, finances, all of that. A material security, you could think of it that way too. Let's see, conjunctio is joining, that's the geomancy rune, the below part of as above, so below, with Fehu being the above side of things, the soul side. And so conjunctio would be more the physical reality that we deal with. And here it's talking about joining in union. So, either way you could look at it is maybe... and you'll see when I talk about the Jupiter in retrograde opposing the sun today, there's some reevaluation that can go on about who you join with and who you're aligning with maybe. You could look at it that way. Lots of ways to look at it, though. If you aren't involved with other people, then maybe it's time to reconnect. It could be something like that. The moon's in Libra. So balance and social stuff. I'm a Libran. I was born on the 13th of October, so I'm square in the middle of all that. And so it's all about balance and justice and the scales, bringing things to it seems to reflect the numerology of 7 to me. It's letting things come to rest and observe and before making decisions, things like that. Libra's also about beauty and beautiful surroundings, and so what we've done here with our the outside of our home anyway. is try to make it a park-like setting, which we've done over the years. We've been here since '81, so we've had lots of time to do it. But so it's kind of a nature and kind of a natural type of an experience, and that's very Libran. But let's go ahead and take a look at the interpretation for today. Although you may be tempted to take the first opportunity that comes along, your intuition tells you it might be wise to step back and reflect before making any commitments during this period. It may be that reciprocity and support are lacking, and you need to balance your intrinsic sensitivity with more realistic expectations. If you do need to step back to reevaluate a new situation, be sure to stay focused on the truth. If you need to seek counsel from someone with more experience, listen to that perspective with an open mind. Now, about Jupiter opposing the sun, it's going to be, Jupiter is closest to the Earth since October 1963. And given that Jupiter is in retrograde, Jupiter is a very expansive energy. And so you're looking at social issues and justice and opportunity and things like that, expanding on whatever, fill in the blank there, whatever applies. But when it's in retrograde, how I see that is it's an internal expansion. And there's a certain amount of reevaluation that goes on when you're looking at that. And so in a sense that retrogrades impact us on an internal level. And with this particular aspects, our beliefs are coming under scrutiny. We might be feeling a little insecure about them, and we may begin to question those beliefs. Are they, and to me, the real issue here is, are they truly in line with our higher self or soul awareness? Or are they in other words, are they creator driven, or are they being driven by ego? And I think it's easy to see that. I mean the easiest one is to see, around the country with the since we've got an election coming up, you see the political stuff, the nonsense that's going on. And because I'm not a fan of politics, but anyway, but you can't help but observe what's going on because it seems to be impacting our personal lives. But even if you don't look at it that way, that's the easy one. Even if you don't look at it there, you can look at the dynamic within your family, within your relationships with others, your neighborhood, your community, work setting. There just could be areas where you can start thinking about, am I acting from a higher awareness, from a soul perspective, from the creator perspective, the creator aspect of self, or is this purely my reactions are just purely egoic? And is it you can look at it in terms of service to self and service to others. There's ways to kind of, examine it. And if it's all about you, then maybe there's problems with that. And so it gives you a chance with this type of aspect to just sort of explore that sort of thing. Jupiter is going to be in retrograde for a little while longer, and so you've got plenty of time to do that. But with this energy today, it just seems like it can, if you haven't been thinking along those lines, maybe this is a good time to start. So let's get that out of the way. We'll get my keyboard out of the way, and we'll go ahead, and we've spent enough time on that. And we'll go ahead and take the rune for the reading, the Elder Futhark one, and then I'll throw the Geomancy runes down and find the Geomancy rune for the below side of things here. Well, we're looking at Rado. And again, with conjunctio today and the esoteric influences, and that's union and joining, in a sense, Rado has some of that energy as well. You're looking at here rider and horse, so integrated motion with something else. It doesn't have to be a horse or another animal. It can be integration with other people. And so with conjunctio, how are you joining together with others? Are you doing it in a collaborative and integrative fashion, or are you at loggerheads with them? I mean, those would be, the two opposites there of the equation. But let's see what we have here. Oh, well, we've got Caput Draconis, which is new beginnings. Kata is the opposite of that. That would be the south node of the moon influence. Caput has the north node of the moon influence. So you're looking at being on the threshold of something new. This was conjunctio. That's what that looks like. Looks like a little hourglass, doesn't it? Okay, where is Caput? I'm about ready just to turn Kata over. If I don't, oh, there it is. Is that it? Yeah. But the Draconi are influenced by the nodes of the moon, and Caput is influenced by the north node. So new beginnings, again, being on the threshold of something new. It's more about where you see your future going, and again with Rado, is that going to be are you going to integrate the soul perspective within that? That's one way to look at it. Or are you going to integrate, how are you going to balance higher awareness with ego? Or how well do you integrate with other people? But again, it starts inside, it starts with the inner awareness, and how are we actually doing all of that? Are we recognizing, for example, that we are souls, in these bodies for a particular amount of time? Are we recognizing that, and are we going from that perspective? Or are we simply going around and reacting to everything that's going on? And Rado would suggest that we need to find some better integration in that regard than we have been. Because we're on the threshold with Caput Draconis of something new happening here. And if it really is in relation to a shift in belief structure, well, that's pretty profound. And you really want, and who are you joining with in all of that with conjunctio? So there's a lot of energies here that I think can dovetail very well together. It just depends on the perspective you end up with. Is it purely ego? Is it about us versus them? Or do you realize the fallacy of that thinking and realize that in truth, there's only just us? I mean, that's all there is. Little aspects of the creator focused into form. It's the thought patterns, from the creator. What there's only one creator. So there's only one us. There is no us versus them. And do we start to recognize that and start to get along and understand how we can see things better, or what do we do? Do we stay, in the morass of ego? Because trust me, that's really what the ego's all about here. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the cards here. We have, again, I think we did this last week, might have been on Thursday, where we had one from the major arcana, one from the court, and one from the minor arcana. Right now we have a 6 numerology. So we're looking at guidance and empathy and helping others, basically shared path, shared direction. But we have the Hierophant, the King of Wands, and the 10 of the 10 of Swords. So we got wands and swords, fire and air. And then the Hierophant is basically about divine wisdom. So we'll start with him. So the Pope basically sits on a stone chair between 2 pillars. We see 2 monks below. We see triplicities here with the crosses. We also see it 1, 2, 3, also 1, 2, 3 on both. We see the crossed keys down here, the keys of knowledge and tradition. He's holding, it looks like 2 fingers up to spirit, but he's really not, because the thumb is also included there. So you see triplicity there. You see it also on his well, whatever, I call it a scepter, but I don't think that's probably what it's called. But I'm not familiar with Catholicism that much, so I don't know what the whole the religious trappings are and all of that. I don't know what they're called. But and then you see the 3 levels of the crown that he's wearing. with the crown not indicating a kingship, but that it's about higher awareness and source presence or the creator. You also see the same crosses on his shoes below. I'll get pretty close so you can see that. Hopefully that doesn't blur. It's not blurring on my screen. Hopefully it won't on yours either. But here we have a five numerology for that, and you're talking about protection, change, balancing freedom versus restriction. So again, belief structure is involved there. But with the Hierophant, you're talking about divine wisdom, mercy, idealism, mastery, hidden knowledge, a spiritual teacher maybe coming into your awareness. But you don't necessarily need that because you possess all of that knowledge anyway. But again, it's knowledge from higher self. And if you're looking at, today Jupiter retrograde opposing the sun and our belief structure, again, if we're feeling a little, like it's a loosening effect, if you want to call it that, it doesn't have to be insecurity about your beliefs, although it could be, but there's a loosening effect where, that path you're on, you're so sure of it. Now with Jupiter in retrograde, maybe you're rethinking some things. And with the sun opposing it, you've got total light. I mean, as you see up in the sky, if you've been looking at it, Jupiter is extremely bright, and so it's illuminating. In other words, that's that higher self. Basically, the sun represents not only the self, but it also represents the creator in some respects, where the light of the creator is coming in and illuminating our belief structure and seeing, are we merciful? Are we someone who has higher ideals? Do you understand that the hidden knowledge that has been hidden has probably been hidden because of the powers that be, instead of what's truly in your own soul's awareness? You already know these things, basically. But in a sense, with the Hierophant, because he sits above the two monks, there's an element there of higher authority. And again, where are you getting that? Are you getting that from what you already know from your soul's perspective, or are you allowing yourself to be manipulated maybe by someone who really has only his or her own agenda in mind? So there's that aspect of things. Authority can be a funny thing, as we can see now with the King of Wands. Wands is the fire element. And so you're looking at creativity, you're looking at motivation, the spark of life. But with this guy, as I have a bias against the kings. And kind of against the Hierophant, but that's just my own perspective, especially when authority is misused. Because if it were to be reversed, you could talk about misuse of that. The same with this, but maybe you don't need to have it reversed. Maybe it's just there naturally in the King of Wands. But the King of Wands is an older man. He's an authority figure. He's not looking at us. He's looking toward the past. You see an eternal aspect here with the Ouroboros. You can see the little salamander, and there he is with his tail in his mouth. You've got it up here and here as well. You see the lion there. So there's a lot of Mars energy to this guy, a lot of fiery energy to this guy maybe. He's knowledgeable, he's wise, he's a warrior, but when he's ill-dignified, he can be cruel and bigoted. He can be a mentor, but again, in what way? Just as with the Hierophant, how are you going to take your cues from someone else, or are you going to go with what you truly know inside to be true? And again, with Jupiter retrograde opposing the sun, it gives you the chance to illuminate that whole idea of authority and where you derive your beliefs. Is it what you truly know inside? Is it what you truly know in your heart to be true? Or is it simply what you're getting from something else that seems to be speaking to your fears or your inadequacies or insecurities or all of that? there's a lot of ways that this can structure itself. And I think right now, with the loosening effect of retrograde with Jupiter, is we try to get the inner expansion going. And what that means is are we living our truest perspective, our truest purpose, from the higher self, or are we again getting bogged down in ego that really isn't serving anyone? And then we come to the 10 of Swords. Swords is the air element. It's our intellect. It's justice. It's reason. It's balance. It could be deception. So self-deception may be here. We see the night is lifting. You can see this cloud starting to appear. You don't see the sun, but it's implied with the yellow background there. We see the mountains in the background. We also see a large body of water here, and here we have somebody supposedly dead on the ground in the sand with 10 swords piercing his back. This might look bad, but it really isn't. Again, we've gone as far as we can go. Implied in the 10 is also not just endings, but new beginnings, because when you reduce 10 to 1, you have 1 and 0 to 1, basically. You have new beginnings. And with the light returning, again, Jupiter being, as it says in my calendar, crazy bright, basically you have a new awareness that could be forming here. You've basically gone as far as you can go with the 10 of Swords, and you really have to let go of perceptions that no longer work for you. And I think that whether you talk about it in terms of perception or belief, realistically, they're basically the same thing, I think. And so today and going forward for a while, it makes sense to rethink your beliefs and where are they really coming from? Are they born of love, or are they born of hate? Are they born of confusion? Are they born of listening to some charismatic individual, for example? That may or may not have, they might seem to have your life concerns to be important to that person, but really it's really not. You're being used in a way to promote their whole agenda. It's an interesting time that we live in, because I think that we're seeing a lot of this around the world. Where belief structures are shifting for some people into a way that is not based on love. It's not based on unity. It's based on hate. It's based on the isms of life. And all of this is just perception. And I think that you're seeing some oppressive countries where people are being tired of being oppressed. You look at it, what's happening in Iran. You look at what's happening in Russia. You look in these places, and you see a groundswell of people saying no more. Enough is enough here. You've oppressed us long enough, basically. And I think that's an example of a major shift in belief structure where people are willing to take to the streets now and try to manifest something better collectively for the people that live there. So you're seeing some of that, but then you're also seeing, conversely, fascism apparently come to Italy, apparently with their new prime minister, who's openly fascist. So politically, all of this then affects people's lives. And at some point, especially if you have the ability to vote for these people, you've got to decide, what do you want? Do you really think that that's going to serve people in a way that elevates society, or is it going to, in fact, oppress society? And in your own personal life, are you interacting with others on that level? Are you taking advantage of other people on that level? Or are you trying to find a way to work together with other people to elevate the situation that you're in? Are you supportive, or are you someone who won't get involved? We're at extremes right now. When you see something like the Jupiter retrograde opposing the sun, you're talking about extremes that are impacting one another. And in the case of this, it's bringing light to the situation. And I think that right now, the situation is bringing light to is our belief structure. And I think that the reading itself is suggesting that for true mastery, it's got to come from the creative side of self, the creator aspect of self. It's got to come from higher awareness. Otherwise, if you leave it to the authority of humanity, basically, in this case, the King of Wands, you're not so sure what you're going to get. You could have a wise mentor, but on the other hand, you could have a cruel and bigoted one who thinks only of himself and is willing to use other people to oppress other people, basically, including the people he's using. And I guess that's the thing people don't necessarily see. They get caught up and they don't see that what's really happening. They think it's going to happen to someone else, but it's going to happen to them too. And they don't see that. So this is a time where the light has returned in such a profound way where it's going to illuminate what's truly going on. And maybe with the Ten of Swords, it's suggesting this is a time to reevaluate your belief structure and let go of things that aren't there to really, that aren't inclusive, that aren't about uniting with others on some shared path that elevates everyone concerned, instead of, elevating one at the expense of everybody else. There's that, because there's that dichotomy that's also happening. So interesting. Didn't really think that, in terms of Rado, where are we going? Are we going to go in an integrated fashion with other people, or are we going to try to go this alone in a way that ultimately I don't think is going to work out for anybody? It's like the whole idea, you better wake up. You better wake up to what you're thinking and what you're doing and all of that, and be sure that it's really reflective of spirit, or is it reflective of ego? And will you take the path of the inner spiritual authority? Like with the Hierophant, you could look at the Hierophant that way, or do you take the more egoic way of the king? And then what perceptions do you then have to reevaluate and let go of? So to stay on that integrated path with other people on the threshold of something new and wonderful that can happen. So anyway, go outside tonight. Look at Jupiter. It's so very cool. When we sit out, it's actually behind some big trees. But the trees are, there's openings enough that you can, that the light of Jupiter comes in. If you kind of move just right, you can see it, and it's really cool. Just meditate on how the light of spirit can change you, can bring profound change to your life, and to see things from that perspective versus, the more us, that because it's inclusive, it elevates all, instead of the us versus themisms that are going on right now, which are so terribly destructive. So I guess that's it for Monday. Not too bad. Well, again, thanks for watching. Thanks for coming by. If you haven't clicked subscribe, I'd love you to do that. Check out the blog. I also write over on Patreon. There's a link to that below in the Show More section as well, below the video. I also write over on Medium. I've just been doing usually just one thing a week. Sometimes I'll do two, but usually it's just one thing a week. Or I might post something, cross-post it from the blog or something that I've done over first on the blog. I'll do that as well. But there's just some astrological stuff I like to look at and share with other people. And I don't claim to be an astrologer by any stretch, but I've always been really fascinated by it, and I like the information that I can pull together, that might get people, again, like with this, just thinking about other kinds of ideas and perspectives, and how you can let that influence your lives and your decisions, and in a way that maybe brings soul into it a little bit more versus the ego. So anyway, thanks for watching. Come back again on Thursday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.